James, we need another chair.
Uh, sure, wherever you would like me.
No.
That you're not James. Your tray. Yeah. This is James. Hi, James.
You are a James.
It's good to see you again.
We're having two
Oh,
James on the air.
No, James
No,
is the
he's
tech.
a tech. He's gonna be in the tech.
Okay, we don't, Noah, give me that chair so that these look cool. I think we should have
We
a,
got hung up here.
we should have a fourth one.
Everybody's got the phones off.
Okay, are we live streaming already? Okay, so we're live on the live stream, so conversations are going out. I'll be back with the script in a minute.
Look at the video feedback. I'm right on the center.
Let's see. You have the headset there? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we prayed right before we came in. Mm-hmm. Quick one.
4 minutes.
Where do you think this?
Let's see. You're not in the shot yet. It's just me.
I know. I think Bob. Why don't you switch with me?
Okay. I just wanted to. This is like an old, like 1950s style microphone here.
So see the monitor.
Oh yeah.
It's a nice place, right?
Can you guys hear?
Can you not?
I can't.
There's a little knob
not
here.
here.
Adjust that.
Got it.
Okay. All right, Mr. May.
Give them your radio look,
Mhm.
the radio face.
That's awesome.
Have you reviewed the local stories we're looking at?
What's that?
Have you looked at the local stories?
I did,
Uh-huh.
yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit. One of them's the transgender.
The
in
D11, yeah.
That one, that's a big one. And then the other one is
Oh wait, I need to.
summer school, like in there's one they're doing summer stuff.
Okay.
Shadows on your faces. 1, 2, 3.
Serious.
Again. Maybe you can do another one when Haim gets to come in. Thank you.
I had a really good. Oh, she can't hear me.
I can hear you.
I had a really good conversation with Aaron Atwood, the vice president of Summit, about classical education, and he wants to meet with me.
Mr. Heim, do we have a clock in here, like a timer that will? Be
I will give you time. I'll be giving you time cues.
All right, thank you.
I gave you 2 scripts. Make sure that you're all in the shot there. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, real quick. Oh wait, which are?
crazy way this operates. Like
Mhm.
he's been running around since.
Yeah, like
Okay.
40 seconds.
So in the first segment, I just introduce you all. So you say, hey, stay on top of the mic. It's got a really close pickup pattern, 2 inches away. You should have headphones on.
Okay.
Your volume is under the desk where the wire plugs in. So you can adjust that. In the first segment, I'll just introduce you. And then at the break, I'll tell you what happens next.
Okay. Can I be referred to as James?
Uh,
This
okay, here we go.
is Bob.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, he knows. Made that correction earlier.
I'll fix it. Welcome to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer. Thank you for joining us as we end our broadcast week. I take Fridays off. I like doing that. But 4 days a week, we are here covering the Pikes Peak region in as hyper-local a way as we can. And on Thursdays, we always do education and media, or education or media. Why do we do that? Well, couple of reasons. One, education is so key to any community. Very often when there's controversy, maybe parents screaming at a school board meeting, you'll hear about it in the news, but actually getting to meet the people, who are educating our children, who are working in the public school system, charter school system, private school system. We need to know all of these people, including school board members who we've had on. So we do education. We do media. Why? Because we're the media, and we need to look at ourselves. We need to inspect ourselves. We need to clean it all up. And that's primarily what we're doing here as far as being the Peak, hyper-local, run by citizens. The people who report the news to you here, the people that come on are your neighbors, and they're here reporting. We have citizen journalists. We have interns. James is on the board right now, came in as an intern, got a job here at Salem. That's the way it's supposed to work, internships. So everything that we do really is education, not indoctrination. We're not trying to convince you of anything. Our job is to give you good information in context and let you make up your mind. Is that refreshing for you? I hope it is. Here's the deal, though. You have to do it. You have to turn on your mind, because we've become so conditioned to either accept everything that we're hearing or reject everything that we're hearing. And that is not having a critical mind. You need to have an open mind. Some people have one that's so open their brain seems to have fallen out. I hope that's not you. It's why you're listening to talk radio, because you want that, but you need to make a decision and actually take action. And that's the part that's really missing. And I'm finding, as I'm getting ready, I was thankfully invited to teach broadcast journalism in D11. I'm going to be a teacher. Wow, like officially licensed to be a teacher here. Is how do you educate youth? Like, what do you do? How do you get that information into them in such a way, not so they can pass a test, but that they can live a healthy, productive, prosperous, engaged life? And that's really, really difficult. Especially now that even as adults, we don't know how to educate ourselves. We tend to be on news feeds. We shove a lot of useless information. If those of you my age who played Trivial Pursuit, right? Like, what do we do with that? I mean, if you can go on Jeopardy and win a lot of money, that's really good. But how many of us can do that? Really, what we need is information that we can work with on a daily basis, and that's why focusing in on the local level is where it's at. What's going on in Washington, D.C., interesting. Denver certainly impacts us. But I feel empowered when I learn about what's going on in my own community and I can engage. And that's why I bring on guests here and make them come into the studio. You're not going to hear many call-ins. We do news reports. But you know what? If you're local, you can come in. That's the thing. And it comes off as a much better program. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about a classical Christian education. What is that? Well, probably if you go back 100 years or 200 years, that's basically all there was in this country. Most of the schools were classical and Christian, even the universities. Harvard University, divinity school, right? So we've lost that to the point where now, like, we actually have to call it that and define that. And one that is here that I know well, I'll say full disclosure, my wife this past school year worked with this school, and also a couple of my children attended. And so we've invited the leadership of the school on today. This is 12 Stones Classical School, a private classical Christian school here. And we have with us director of the school, Donna Shell, board president, Bob May, and graduate, 2022 graduate, Trey Shell.
Afternoon.
All of you, welcome. Welcome on the program. Welcome on the Peak.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have headlines coming up next, educational headlines, a lot. Sometimes I have a problem finding them, but we had an abundance. I guess school's out, so now turning toward policy and other kinds of stuff. There is a lot in the headlines. Bob is going to be sharing about a classical Christian education. What should we be thinking about? And then we'll be talking about what's going on in education in our community. What are the advantages we have here in Colorado? Because there's a lot of school choice. And how do you choose that for your children? I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. We have 12 Stones Academy, classical school. Is it academy or just classical school?
Classical school.
Classical school. I'll throw that word out. I'm used to using it. You're listening to The Peak, and we'll be right back. Okay. So we are still, the commercials go out there. The live stream is what we're talking about here. So you're never off that. So a couple, here's my spiel about radio. One is, be on top of the mic. It's got a very close pickup pattern, about 2 inches off it when you're speaking. Radio is really, I know it's not voyeuristic because it's not video, but it's really like I say, you're in a coffee shop, people are having an interesting conversation and you listen in. That's talk radio, people listening in. So having the conversation, keeping it lively, that's what people want. And they're learning, they're being entertained at the same time. Because it's just voice, we go a little over the top because you don't get the body language and the facial expression. So voice has to carry it all, which is why you hear people talking like this. Plus the times are tight. So we talk a little quicker. With having this many people, you're going to need to decide how to bounce it back and forth because we end up with the same amount of time. So keep that in mind. And also, like radio theater, vocalize emotions. So if you're smiling or it's aggravating. Otherwise, everything stays in the booth. But if you vocalize I talk with my hands, but I know I'm channeling that, the pauses, the emotion, everything. It just makes for more dynamic communication. Okay. As far as timing goes, this means wrap it up. So if I look at you and do that, you have about 10, 15 seconds, land the plane. You have to come to a screeching halt, but land the plane. That's how, I have to get to the next question or we have a break. If you hear music, that's my 30-second warning track to the commercial. So you got to finish up at that point. Otherwise, during the monologue that you have, you'll have about 4 minutes. So I'll give you a 3, a 2, a 1, and this means 30 seconds. So you have time to put the final chapter on it. So when you see those cues, make sure you're clicking through your bullet points that you don't get to the end and I missed, I didn't cover everything I wanted to, but you'll start feeling out the timing as we go. If you come up short, I'll ask a follow-up question, but try to fill the time. Okay. Otherwise, if you see me hold up a finger to you, I'm not telling you to stop. I'm giving you a time budget. So I'm saying, hey, take about a minute on that. Okay. And then we'll work our way through. So
Yeah, if I need help,
Yeah.
I mean, or if they want to say something in my monologue or whatever, I just need you guys.
well, we don't. We
Just
give it.
one
We give it to
person?
what? Yeah.
Okay.
Think an op-ed piece.
Okay.
So
I'll
it's
just go.
you're
Look at
just
that.
yeah. You're gonna go
When
that.
yeah. Okay. And is that in the next one or is
No,
that
the
too-
next one. So in the next segment, and we're back in about a minute and a half. The next segment, we have these headlines.
Right.
I'm going to be introducing one. One is D11 passes policy impacting transgender student athletes. D11 approves contracts for 2 new charter schools, and then summer learning. So I'm going to just sort of, the reason we do this is for people to get comfortable talking about the news. If you know about this, you can comment to the actual thing. If you just want to riff off of the topic, do that. But this is just a bantering, news time and giving people some updates and like when do people get three education headlines, right? Like so there's that. We will be promoting 12 Stones directly at the end of the interview segment in segment 4. Until then, keep that part light. Like we'll get into the actual programs and how you register and all that. So you can of course mention it as we go. Like I'm going to ask you some point for your bio, to give a little bit of your background, but keep the promotion. Otherwise, we're a news show. So we're trying to communicate information, but of course there's a level of promotion. We're back in 20 seconds. Any quick question? How do we do this?
More conversational than interview based for at least the headlines portion.
Yeah, I'll introduce it, and you guys. So because we're all in the booth together, look at each other and point if you want to like hand it off or whatever.
Okay, great.
Good. Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to us on AM 1460 and FM 101.1. The Answer, part of the Salem Network in the Colorado Springs, Pikes Peak region. Happy to have you join us on Education Day. And we have with us leadership and a graduate of 12 Stones Classical School. Did I get that right?
You got it
okay,
right.
It's a little bit of a mouthful, but I'll work it out. Donna Shell, Bob May, Trey Shell. Got it? Okay. Hey, I'm clicking along. My brain's Thursdays, it's the last day I'm on. I tend to be a little exhausted, but the coffee's kicking in, and that's a good thing. So this is our headlines segment where we talk about the news, and we have 3 education headline stuff. That's just 2 of them just yesterday from the D11 board meeting. I guess one is one's from last night, one's from a week ago. First one, Colorado Springs. Sometimes we save these, we wait for the guest who can actually talk about them. Colorado Springs D11 passes policy impacting transgender student athletes. The D11 Board of Education voted 6-1 to approve policy IBA, preserving fairness and safety in sports, which will classify sports teams as either male, quote, male, comma, men or boys. Can you imagine we have to do this now? And then, quote, female, comma, women or girls, or, quote, co-ed, comma, mixed or open. That any sports will be put in those 3 categories and not to be violated. This will ensure that students aren't allowed to participate in sports, be present in locker rooms or lodge in hotels with the opposite biological sex. We know that these things seem to be common sense, but common sense isn't so common anymore. And we have these policies that come down from the state, and then local school boards, which are supposed to be autonomous regarding education, have to figure out how to creatively, because very often they have to be creative, to comply with, I don't know, how do we keep a naked man out of a girl's locker room? Like, I don't know, just tell him he can't come in. But that doesn't seem to be necessarily an option anymore. So you run a private school. Because it's Christian, those who come to the school probably don't want these things and don't have an issue. But what kind of conversations have you had to have about policies where the state seems to be encroaching on your right to run a public school?
Yeah, well, we've absolutely
Bob May.
Yeah, we've absolutely had to set a specific statement of faith and a statement of doctrine that makes those things very clear, because obviously we're in a culture and a state that does want to push those some ideas on not just kids but parents and the whole culture. And so it's a heavy subject, but one that we deal with obviously every year, and one that's important to us, and that we make sure we set those guidelines and those rules. And I applaud this the District 11 policy that the board has come up with. But this is it doesn't stop there. So this is, we see that even with the recent 1312, the HB 1312 that's come down. That's doesn't stop anybody from being able to dress however they want in a school, and so I think that's something that, as a private classical Christian school at 12 Stones, that we want to make sure we set guidelines and set policies that allow our students to flourish in the way they were created, in the bodies that they were created.
Now, you're not large enough at this point to have sports teams and sports programs, right? You do PE.
We do. And
Yeah.
in the past, we have had some sports teams in the past. So
Okay.
yes, we have, and we've competed in leagues against other smaller schools and stuff.
And you're in D20. Or
Yeah,
what
D20.
district? So physically you're in D20. Does does what the school board, or Bob, you're a board member, so does
Right.
that mean you have a board that governs the school period?
Yes, we
Okay.
govern the school. So yes, the state really doesn't have a role at all in telling us what we as a private classical Christian school at 12 Stones can do.
Really? Like at all? Or no? Okay. So that's part of private.
That's why it's important. That's why that
Yeah.
separation is so critical to us, because once the state, and especially in a state like Colorado, who's pushing some of these ideas, we have to be able to protect what we believe is true and good and beautiful about how we're created, about who we are as humans.
Donna Shell, director, do you have a comment on this one?
Well, I would just want the listeners to understand that in Colorado revised statutes, there's compulsory law for public education, and then there are 3 options to educate your family in the non-public law. And so private school is one of those, and there's even more options beyond that.
So, like regarding the transgender, the HB 1312, the statutes that affect schools, not you?
No, it does not affect us. That's why it's important to understand that you bring your kid to 12 Stones Classical School, that they will dress as their I mean, that's the big, one of the, they changed a lot of it, but in the end it has come out that the child can still, if he's a boy, can dress as a girl or dress as a woman, or vice versa. And so those are things that are important in our role as educators, in trying to teach truth and goodness, and establish those virtues. It's very important that we have that kind of statement.
So D11, next article, D11 approves contracts for 2 new charter schools. D11 expands its school portfolio. Board of Education unanimously voted, this was a week ago, to approve the contracts for these schools, approved a contract for the existing Colorado Military Academy last month. And I'm trying to find the schools on here. Talk about here, True North Classical Academy. To talk about the difference of a charter school versus a private school versus public school. Donna?
It really comes down to where they're operating within the statutes. So a charter school is a public institution and is subject to the laws that affect public schools. They have individual boards that will try to honor the values that are included in the charter, and that the families have joined that school to what has brought them together in their commonalities. And so that can be where some relief comes, but when it comes to what they're required to do, they are a public school.
Oh, here we are, right on the front cover. East Hills Academy and Spruce Community School. Because it's media, I'm going to comment to this. Not who wrote it, but there's a way of writing newspaper articles, and that way, sometimes I have time to really read through them, and sometimes I don't. And I went looking for the names of these schools and couldn't find them on the first 2 pages, but there's 2 big logos right on the front. I missed them. So anyway,
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand. I mean, these are charter schools, and like Donna was saying, they are subject to the rules of the state, the laws of the state. So they've got to follow those laws. So, for example, again, 1312, they are still subject to that law that our the House, the State House, and the government here in Colorado has passed, of which 12 Stones obviously is not subject to that. I think it's important to understand. I know even one of your schools was a classical school, but it's a classical charter school. I think it's really important to understand that a classical Christian school, even though it's got the classical name and the charter school, which goes back thousands of years, which is great. But when you are classical without being Christian, then you lose that foundation that's so important to that classical school. And that's what drives those virtues in that classical.
and a classical education is that you're reading the classic works in each section.
Classical works, but you're learning how the Socratic method and the Plato and Socrates, and how they thought what was so important about education was the virtues of education, not like today where we're saying education. Most public schools are saying education is important to get a job or to go to a college or something like that. We believe, like the classical model, that education is about establishing virtues and teaching truth and raising citizens that know real truth and objective truth.
And that would be comparative to what would be called a parochial school, which is they're primarily teaching the doctrine of a specific faith, as opposed to
Yes.
Christian undergirding with still the Socratic method and the
Yes.
Greek way of
Correct.
thinking.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So, I just used to get on the school bus.
It's so different now. Yeah. Very different.
There was one place, one elementary school, one junior high, one high school. Boy, things are different here now. So parents we have about 20 seconds. Parents really have choice.
They
Donna.
have choice, and they should consider their choices carefully.
Absolutely.
Trey, real quick.
Yeah, the great thing about public education is that it gives everyone access regardless of socioeconomic background, but people inevitably become numbers. They become a statistics, and so they have to, fit into the economic categories. Classical education allows people to really dive into who they are as individuals.
Hey, you're listening to The Peak. We'll be right back talking education with 12 Stones. School.
So, here's a direction to go.
Yeah.
There's a faulty premise, right? Like you have to back up.
And by the way, we are on.
Yeah,
on live.
I think everybody should hear this.
Okay.
There's a premise. Do you see a student's mind as a bucket to be filled? And then you enter the fray of what fills the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Should it be this agenda or this agenda? Maybe it's not even a bucket, right?
Mhm.
Like maybe a student's mind is a fire to be kindled. And that's a quote from Plutarch, who's an ancient Greek philosopher who wrote Parallel Lives. So it's really about your whole worldview, what a child is. That's where it begins.
Okay. So are you going to include that in the monologue in this
Well,
next segment?
I mean, it wasn't that quote necessarily, but I'll be.
No, but I'm
it'll be
saying,
similar to that.
okay. So I just want to, because
Yes.
if you want to do that, I have to figure out where that gets communicated
I'll
in
include
the
some of
show, so that you'll cover that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll include some
And
of
then
that.
you can bring on the thing about radio. We have to assume that people may be hearing the whole thing, especially in the podcast, but also that people are getting in and out of their cars.
Right.
So there's a level of redundancy, but we don't want it to just be the same thing. So if you bring in, say, in the last segment I talked about, but now present it a little differently, different context, because we want to assume that there are people that are listening to the whole thing, especially the podcast. So that's one of the challenges of this medium is the transient nature of the listener.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know
That's why you hear us saying the call letters all the time and reintroducing the guests. And,
we all got on the
everything.
school bus when we were little.
Yeah.
Because we were seen as a bucket to be filled.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on segment 3.
All right.
So Bob, going to so I'll intro and then throw it to you. You'll have about 4 minutes.
Okay,
So watch for the time cues. Keep the energy up. And again, if for some reason you run out, I'll get a question ready, but try to fill the time. And then for you to look forward for segment 4, these were the basic questions. Authority and background. We get to meet you, plus it establishes your authority to answer the other questions.
Okay.
The problem context is so people buy into the fact that there's an issue to solve. Solution is not yet really your solution, but a hopeful solution that we can. And then when they buy into you, buy into the problem, buy into a hopeful solution, now we have a chance that they may be interested in what you're doing. So so now we're already doing all this and solving this problem at a higher level. Check us out. So didn't write the website. What is what?
12stonescs.org.
Spell with the number or the word?
TWELVESCS.org.
Okay.
Classical.
And is there any specific call to action? Something, I mean, just
They
come
can-
register.
they
Enroll.
can
Right,
text-
enroll, right?
Yeah.
Enroll.
Okay. Okay.
They can text or
Okay,
call.
we're back in 30.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to figure what we want to do. So since Bob is doing the monologue here, if you want to think, we have about 4-minute segment at the end as a wrap up, so you can think that'll be interview, not monologue, but to think about the topic.
Okay.
Or even you might jump in on that, Trey, to that last end part.
Mhm.
You might jump in on that that last one. Okay. And I give your.
Welcome back to the Peak News on Education Day. Do you feel lied to? Do you feel that you've maybe been lied to since you started getting educated? You know, what do we do with education? How do we raise people up so that they can think for themselves? Because really, I know me. I didn't like school so much. I was pretty bored. through it until I got to college and even my junior year and switched schools and started studying broadcasting and film. Then I woke up. So pretty much most of the education that I've enjoyed has happened in my adult years after college. So if we don't learn how to learn, we're in trouble. Our family, we homeschool, but then we also decided some of our children would do well at 12 Stone Classical School. And we have the leadership here with us today, Bob May, board president, director Donna Shell, and 2022 graduate Trey Shell. But in this segment, turning it over to Bob to talk about what is a classical Christian education. Bob May.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Chaim. This is I'm super excited just to be able to talk about what it is, what it means to be classical, but not just classical, but Christian. And that is really the foundation of what we are about at 12 Stones Classical School. So and this idea of the classical model goes back, thousands of years. So this is the original idea of education when you're talking about Plato and Socrates and these great philosophers and educators that they were. This was all about how do we train children in that day and age? How did they train children? And they believed that the goal of education was to train truth, to train these children to understand what truth was, to understand what beauty was, what it meant to be good. And how did they do that? They wanted to train virtue. Now that's important, and this is time tested, this type of education. Even our founding fathers were trained and educated this way. And what's important is, as a Christian, classical and Christian, which is why we are so unique at 12 Stones Classical School, as a Christian in a Christian education, then that means that classical model now has a real foundation to it, and that foundation, which is found in those Christian virtues, the Christian virtues of what it means to live as a human. And we ask those deep questions, and we train these children as they begin through the ideas of what we call the trivium. So the grammar level, the logic level, and then the rhetoric level. And so they're starting at that grammar level, just how they are as humans, where they just memorize and memorize and memorize. And that brain just takes in everything it could take in that grammar level. Right. And then they move to that logic level. You've had that probably 12 or 13-year-old that likes to argue with you. That's the way we are created. That's that.
You know him.
Yes, I know him. But yes, that's in that argumentative level. That's where they're taking what they know and they want to argue. They want to tell you.
Could you get him to stop doing that, please? I'd be like, no, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, he's like his father.
Yes, they're the way they're created, and that's why we want to take that way they're created, and we want to foster that. We want to teach them not just to argue, but how do you do it rightly? How do you do it with real logic? And we teach them logic, and we teach them the ideas of how to argue truthfully and rightly, and do that in a good way. And then that area, that age of those high school years where you start worrying about how you look and how you speak and all those things, how your hair looks. But we take that the way we're created, and we want to foster this idea of speaking well and communicating well and writing well. And you're doing that in a way that communicates truth and beauty and goodness. And that is just this model of the way we're teaching in a classical and Christian model is, I believe, the way we change this culture. It's the way we train our kids to grow up and to move out of the house one day, out of that basement, right? And now they're in those jobs, whether it's a trade school job or whether it's vocational, whether it's college, whatever that is. Now they're speaking truthfully, they're speaking rightly, they know what they believe, they know how to communicate what they believe. And I think that is, bottom line, that's the way we change this culture. That's the way we move in a culture that communicates virtuous living and truthful living, and not the type of, I guess, thing that you see now in culture. And that is why I am so passionate about classical Christian education. Why 12 Stones Classical School, I believe, is the place we need to be.
Okay. Bob May, board member, board president of a private classical Christian school. When we come back, being joined by, here in the studio, director of 12 Stones, Donna Shell, and recent graduate Trey Shell. We're going to be talking about what are the primary issues we're dealing with our youth and education in our region, and how can we solve it together. We'll be right back.
Dude, I love radio.
Radio is great. Voice is powerful. It's all
Yeah. Oh.
voice, and you can switch things up, and you don't have to go video.
For it.
Yeah.
I think it's going well.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is just a 2-minute break. This is real quick. Okay, so since Bob's been talking, Donna, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay.
So each of these questions, we have about 12 minutes for the whole thing, but with the intros and outros and questions and banter, it's about 2 minutes per. So we need to decide, usually it's one guest. So with this, how do you want to bounce it back and forth, or who wants to take lead? But we do need those
Yeah, I do
timings
think
to
it's
go.
important for Trey to get
Right.
a voice in here on how.
So out of these questions, so we have these questions. And when we go to Trey, I'll ask you to just give, 20-second bio kind of thing.
Okay.
Since you're younger, you
Before
shouldn't
the
have as
interview.
long a one. What? Well, I don't want to do 3 bios
Right.
Yeah.
because we're going to establish them. But when we come to you, just they'll say, tell us about you, and then answer the question.
Yep.
But don't take a minute, because that'll basically be your time. So in looking here, how do you want to divide this up? We have about 45 seconds till we're back. So
Well, Chaim, you all got on the school bus as a kid. I'm the one who's actually received a classical education. So I'll let you guys open up and start with kind of the initiative of why you guys started 12 Stones.
So do you want them to talk about the issues and you come in on the
Worry about them.
solution one?
Yes, I
Number
can
three?
help explain the current
Because you
climate and-
experience. Well,
Yes.
which one? The current climate is number two.
Number two is what I thought.
Okay, you'd like to take that.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
cool. Good deal. Okay, we're back in 20 seconds. Thanks for listening to the Peak News. Today is Thursday. This is when we end our broadcast week, and we end it with education and media, focusing in on education today, and specifically private school education, specifically classical education, specifically Christian education, because there's a lot of different options. And honestly, I don't understand them all. And yet I have 6 children. We homeschooled, we unschooled, I have Rhodes Scholars because we traveled a lot. We had road schoolers. And now this past year, my 2 youngest were in 12 Stones Classical School. And we have the leadership with us here today, Board President Bob May, Director Donna Schell, and recent student Trey Schell. Before we get back to them, I'm going to give a shout out to one of our sponsors that I love, because it gets me out there, and it's keeping me, trying to keep me from getting flabby, which is Mayweather Boxing and Fitness. We all know we're supposed to work out. Why don't we do it? Is it because we're lazy? No, it's not because we're lazy. It's because it's boring a lot of the time. But boxing workout is really, really cool. And it's more than boxing. They do fitness. Some of the stuff they do, there's no boxing in it. It's the hardest workout I've ever done. So check out Mayweather Boxing and Fitness. They're over at Prominent Point, that awesome new area up in the Northeast by Briargate and Powers. Go to Mayweather.fit, choose Colorado Springs, and go and get a free workout there, and let them know the Watchman sent you. So back to Education Day. Let's start out finding out about Donna Schell. How did you end up as the director of 12 Stones Classical School?
Hi, thank you. I was a public school teacher. And so I was in a stage of my life where I could spend every ounce of my energy, every dime, and every waking minute pouring into a classroom with 32 kids. And then when I had my own children, I realized I wasn't resourced enough in our public school education system to give my children what I wanted them to have. So I became the director of 12 Stones Classical School after sitting as a mentee and as a protege under some wonderful classical Christian schools back east. When the Air Force brought us out here to Colorado Springs, couldn't really find anything that would meet that vision that I had grown from my own family.
Okay. And then starting the school, how did that come about?
So find a couple of like-minded families and make it happen.
And-
it was just from the bottom up, hardworking. I had the support of my home church. That was key. Pastor Bob Bender was
I know Bob. He used to do a show here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And so So he is a champion for the project and gave it that nurturing that it needed to get it off the ground.
Okay. Bob?
All right.
Bob
yeah,
May?
I am got involved in classical education, classical Christian education, but just at the beginning in 2015 when we first got started, I was asked by Donna to be the rhetoric history teacher. So my passion is history. But I've done a lot of teaching. I'm also a Air Force Academy grad and a retired Air Force, and I spent most of my Air Force career teaching, actually instructing. And so I had this model for where I like to instruct, but I learned in the classical model. I learned really how to do it well, and it's just through study and practice and learning how they did it, how Socratic method works, and how some of those ideas about education works. And I began to realize that wow, that's the real way to educate, to get these children to take something and to really love it and learn it and want to know more. And I think that's that love of just seeing those kids take that, and also my passion for history and how does history a lot of times kids tend to think history is boring in the public school system, and but we take history, and my passion for it is how do the ideas of history, how is this culture, how has this world been shaped by the ideas and events of history? And we can, as we and my kids in my class can look at those ideas, and we can analyze that, look at that, question that, and really see where these ideas shape where we're at right now.
Trey Shell, I'll turn this the next question to you. You graduated in 2022 from 12 Stones. What do you see as main issues in education or lack thereof in our region? What are the challenges we have in educating our youth these days?
Yes, Chaim. Let me give you a little bit of my own experience before we go to a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
So as soon as I entered higher education, the difference became very stark. I was with other students in a liberal arts college who did come from a similar background, and also students who came from the public education system. And the difference became apparent very quickly. The people who are trained to think classically integrated much more. The people who came from the public school system would come to me and be like, hey, this is new to me. I was not trained to think this way. And that's one of the big differences with classical Christian education is we don't just learn what to think or the different points to think. We learn how to love thinking, how to love education. So if you listen around nowadays, you'll see a kind of humor that's out there of students saying, why do we need to know when the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth? That's not going to help me with my taxes. That's not going to help me learn about credit card debt. And while I understand where that humor is coming from, it shows a very
going to college
problem.
will teach you about credit card debt.
Hey,
you'll be in
true.
it by the time you're out. Yeah,
that is very true. But there's this whole idea now that there's a lot of knowledge getting thrown out at kids that they find irrelevant because they don't see how it's going to help them navigate life. Well, with a classical Christian idea, we understand that the human is not just someone to raise to be performance-based, to, contribute to the GDP and become a functioning member of society. No, we believe that each individual is far more than a number. Each person is uniquely made with individual gifts to foster. And a classical education is able to help students realize that and develop that on their own accord so that their education is not just something for them to get a paycheck, but it's a way to teach them to work with the world around them.
Why do you think we got here, where it's just about sort of form and function and passing the test as opposed to being a free individual?
Yes, great question. It did not used to be this way. Pre-industrial era, we did have, Western academia develop off of, a Christian ideals and, Hellenistic influence, going back to what the Greek philosophers thought about education, which is that different subjects are integrated together and that you need to study everything to get a holistic view of the world. Well, now with becoming more economics based in the post-Enlightenment era, it's all about knowledge and how to function and about efficiency. How do we crank out the numbers? How do we get people to most efficiently, perform well? That's the trap the public school systems are in because they rely on government funding, and that funding is often contingent on how they perform in certain ways. So we need to find a way to escape that trap and realize that, no, it's not just about performing well in certain jobs. It's asking, how can we raise students to become good, parents, siblings, sons and daughters, and how do they relate to community at large instead of just their own individual interests? And that fosters much better citizens, which is ultimately going to lead to greater change in our culture than just pushing for, political changes within the higher education and in our own government.
So D11 especially, and I'm going to have a chance to teach in D11, and they're quite, I don't like using the word progressive properly, forward thinking and forward moving, and they are to train in the trades and everything. But Donna, coming from the public school system, not everybody can do private school or wants to do private school. Can we get this into the public school system? And if so, what would you recommend? What are the types of basic things that you'd like to see to help students think in the public realm?
I think our classroom teachers are burdened, Haim, and without room for this, what can they do as far as the education to help a student flourish as a human? They do need to be fed. They do need to have a peaceful nervous system, right? There are some physical needs to be met, and so as society has kind of become more challenged in those areas, teachers are having to direct attention to those basic needs, and so there's not room anymore in the classroom to reach that next level to get to educate them.
And then we've also seen teachers who, what I would call overstepping, which is teaching personal ideologies that aren't part of education. So rooting those out and putting the other in.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's really important to understand too. That's why 12 Stones Classical School is a collaborative, which means it is so important that we are in line with what the parent is also believes is good for their student, and that's why 12 Stones Classical School is so important to have that parent on board with us, and we're collaborating with them on a daily basis.
Okay, but we just have 2 minutes left. I want to turn to the school. So tell us about the school specifically, what students experience and how you're enrolling now, right? So tell us how to do that.
For the fall of 25, you can visit 12stonescs.org to look through our website. And if you find yourself resonating with what's there, we encourage you to click that button and send an inquiry form, and we'll be in touch with you to get your contact information and see.
And
if
is
it's
it
a good
all,
fit.
it's K through 12?
It's K through 12
Okay. And how are you funded?
through tuition dollars and donations.
Okay. There's state money. I mean, homeschoolers can't get vouchers, but there is money that comes. So if how does that work? Does that work in your system?
No, 12 Stones Classical School is only private dollars.
Okay. Anything else you want to say? I got about a minute left. How would you encourage parents who are thinking, I don't know, I'm just so used to the public system to check this out?
Well, if you do like your child being watched by others for over 15,000 hours of their childhood, then the public school is a great fit for you. But if you want to maintain some influence and help nurture the soul of your child, then you want to partner in education. We're great partners.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And and we have also some flexibility at 12 Stones. So you're not just sitting in the classroom for, 5 days a week at, 8 hours a day, but with the flexibility that we have also in working with the parents to make sure those kids' needs are met along with what the parents' expectations are. So I think that's where we are just such a critical piece to education and how we can be a part of that with those parents. So enroll.
Okay, and no strings attached because there's no state or federal money. So you serve the parents, you serve the students.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Goldman the Watchman. We're talking education today with the leadership of 12 Stones Christian School in Colorado Springs. We didn't talk about what we're talking about in the next section, so at the break we'll be doing that. And you're just going to have to keep tuning in here to find out. But it'll be educational. I promise you that. You're listening to The Peak. We say the quiet stuff out loud, and we'll be right back. Okay, this is a 3-minute break. So what do you want to talk about in the final segment? We forgot to have that conversation. We got about 4 minutes or so.
Okay.
What do we talk about? Anything else, Trey, that you, okay, we gotta.
We could cut loose and go deep into, kind of what's education.
Okay, and topic?
Cultural level. I think we should look at the recent development of what education means in our country,
Oh, yeah.
of how maybe higher education especially has changed from.
I can talk about the history of education and John Dewey and why we're here, where we're here, because of the 1950s and there was the Humanist Association, which under John Dewey that produced. all of our-
Which was set up by the 30s.
So
and the
just,
20s, yeah.
and we have about 2 minutes to decide on this, is as we make the story arc, we want to come back around to things that are more the solutions, the hopeful stuff, the how to take action or how to educate yourself. I mean, it's mostly adults here, so we could talk about, educating yourself later in life, like and applying the same. But I don't want to get into the problem again. That was earlier. I want people moving off feeling I can do something.
Okay.
So with that in mind, what do you want? What do you think?
Well, I mean,
We like active listeners,
right.
like,
I mean, I think that's I mean, we see obviously the solution in education to be to 12 Stones being classical and
Right.
Christian. So
but we hit that 50 times.
We
So,
hit that,
yeah.
I know. So yeah.
I mean, what about educating yourself as an adult?
Oh.
Continuing lifelong education.
Yeah, and I think I
that-
think that's great because that's what classical education points you to
Okay.
is lifelong education, even as an adult. And I could share my personal experience with that as well.
Okay.
But
So this is good. I like it. So figure out you're gonna have about 4 minutes. When I do the wrap up, we have to, because I don't get music this time. I have to throw to a pre-recorded
okay,
thing. So we gotta end on time.
I can probably
Here,
have a couple minutes.
But how do you want to?
I'll start out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So know that you'll have between the three of you, you'll have about 4 minutes.
Okay.
So just leave me like the last 30 seconds so I can encourage people to come visit us. And
Yeah.
Great.
do I say
Okay.
the website again?
Yeah, sure. Or I
Okay.
can. Yep.
Okay.
You
or
do
yeah,
it.
Or
I
yeah,
do it.
you do that.
Well, it's if you don't, I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, we're back in 30.
All right. Let's just have we have 3.5 minutes before I hand over to you. So total of 4 minutes.
Yeah,
All
be,
right.
be about 4 minutes by the time
Okay.
I intro.
All right. Let's have a little conversation then.
Okay. Fun.
You're listening to the Peak News, and we are learning a lot today on Education Day. Colorado, for all of the things that maybe we don't like so much, obviously it's beautiful, but from a human standpoint, governmental standpoint, the ability to choose education for your children, not stuck in the neighborhood you're in, go to any school around it, it's quite amazing. And so if you're still in that mode, parent, grandparent, with youth, look into it, because there's more than you think, especially the trades. They're trying to get, students out of high school already with an associate's degree, which for most people, that's probably what they need to get on with life. And then you can decide from there, and without the debt. So it's really cool what's going on here in education. And you may choose also, a private school education if that fits your child, a Christian education if that fits you and your family. And so I want to finish up this segment with the leadership of 12 Stones Christian School, talking about lifelong learning. Bob May.
All right. Well, thank you, Chaim. I think it's important to understand that in classical Christian education, that's what our pursuit is, and that's why we see this as a solution. Is we are instilling within these kids a pursuit of lifelong learning, and I just want to share my.
But what do we do now? Now I'm old. What do I do?
Yeah, so I'm going to share that experience. So my experience, even as I've been involved with classical education as an adult, is this idea that I want to pursue truth. I want to know what's true. I want to pursue that, and I want to know that it's there, that there is truth, and this just really instilled within me just this desire to read. I mean, I admit I'm reading The Tale of Two Cities right now, so I know it's a classic. You probably didn't read it since you were in high school, and now I've gone back to it, and now I'm reading this. It's in this whole new light as I'm seeing this truth that's instilled within The Tale of Two Cities and these human aspects that Charles Dickens is talking about, and now I'm going, oh, there's truth in here. There's truth in our human nature and what he's talking about, and being able to see that.
Trey, for those of us whose brains aren't as plastic anymore, encourage us, to keep learning.
Yes. So, Bob, I like what you said earlier. You can always keep learning and developing a love for truth as an adult. I think it's easy to become a little bit discouraged looking at what higher education is becoming in our own country, but there are many upsides as well, and I really think we should be hopeful. People are realizing that success is not reliant on a piece of paper you get from college, that we could learn on our own. We could be independent. We could bring back this idea of a Socratic dialogue, and within our own communities have arguments about what is true, good, and beautiful. We are not just helpless at the hands of policies we feel like we have no influence over in our government. We have the ability to deliberate and come together as a community. So I think we could feel a change in the wind. Schools are changing. The way, the Ivy Leagues having target on a federal level is extreme. We're seeing on a very local level the stuff with D11, speaking out against, discrimination against girls is how it was phrased in the motion yesterday. And I think we could be very hopeful indeed, because we're taking power into our own hands. We are striving for independent thinking, and we are not afraid of alternative points of view. The whole thing of a Christian education is not just that, students are also learning Bible verses in the classroom. It's a different dimension of thinking where we are not afraid to confront the different ideas around us, because we think that if we are pursuing truth, it will win. And we can have, all these difficult conversations, even if they're really uncomfortable. That's been my experience as I've pursued this college degree as well. So I've spoken in different places in some controversial areas, written op-eds on issues such as, abortion, international politics. But it's wonderful, and I wish more people would have this. And it's there.
I'd like to see Christian thought and education come into the churches.
Yes. Yeah.
Because people. I'm a Messianic Jew, and we like, Jews. We like to argue. We like to discuss, but discussing tough topics is tough. Donna Shell, last comment.
I think adults need to take responsibility for guarding their hearts and their minds and their souls. And when you are consuming garbage is going to come out. You're going to start to lose your hope. And if you'll read good old books, you'll find truth and big ideas that will bring hope back to your heart.
Okay, you looking for teachers?
We would like to interview anybody who
Okay,
thinks they
so
can contribute.
that'll keep you young. So go to 12 Stones, spell out the word 12stonescs.org. Thanks so much for being on the Peak today.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and then thank you for helping to educate my children. And now, Jim Miller, just a guy in the Peak rants, ranting about dead naming.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for another week of The Peak. We are back on Monday, and guess what we're going to be doing on Monday? We're going to cover Pikes Peak Pride because it's June, and so of course all the Pride events are going on. And I want to put out a challenge to you. I know we want to stay away from it, but down at the Pioneer Museum Saturday and Sunday, there's going to be this thing called Pikes Peak Pride, and it's a celebration down there. But you know what? It's right at the Pioneer Museum. It's in the middle of our city. It's supported by tax dollars. And personally, it's supposedly a family-friendly event. It's open. So if you want to drop your child at the Drag Queen Story Hour, I guess that's up to you. I don't know who does, why people do that. But don't shy away from it. It's happening. There'll be thousands of people down there. Go and engage. And you know who'll probably be down there because they were down there last year? The Social Democrats of El Paso County, the Church of Satan. They'll be down there with a booth. There'll be corporations down there. You might want to ask them, why do you support this? Is it, again, not talking about the lifestyle. They can live that way. But why is it celebrated? Is this what Colorado Springs is about? And if you stay away from it, you won't know what it really is. And you might actually believe the rhetoric. But don't do that. Think for yourself. I actually, on Father's Day, I'm going down there with my children. Some were there last year. And then we're going to have a whole team. Our citizen journalist, Jordan Baldwin, are going to be down there. And we're going to come back on Monday and we're going to tell you what we found. We really need to know what's going on in our society in every place. And this is a big public event. So check it out. Tomorrow, Dirk Hobbs and the Business Digest Weekly will be here in place because we get Fridays off. Coming up next here on The Answer is the Larry Elder Show, so stick around for that. And go to our website, thepeak.news. Check out our 250-plus podcasts. Find out about becoming a citizen journalist, an intern, a sponsor. We love our sponsors. They're what who keep us on the air. Because here at The Peak, it's about citizen journalism. It's about you as we say the quiet stuff out loud for such a time as this. Have a great weekend. Shalom.